Some of this may be repeated, but it's intentional. Now, your spiritual DNA, it was encoded with more than potential. It was encoded with a capacity, right? High level impact, because you have high level intellect, high level creativity, and high level perception. And long before you ever took your first breath on this earth, the heavens made sure you were pre stimulated, pre enriched, and pre prepared. Because down here, the jealousy and envy sit thick in the air. Down here, people with real talent, like predators reading footprints. That's what jealousy and envy is in the air. They can read our talent, right? And down here, if you were born without that early hedge, they would have spotted your gifts before you had language for them and choked them out before they ever bloomed. So heaven didn't wait. Heaven didn't wait for earth to raise you. God didn't need earth to raise you. Heaven gave you stimulation before the womb. Heaven gave you, I have chills. Heaven gave you enrichment before even touch. Heaven gave you exposure before experience. So no environment could fully take from you what God already placed in you. The reason you react to the way you do in certain environments, the reason you feel the temperature of a room before anyone else, the reason you sense motives before words can land is because your spiritual DNA recognizes the terrain before your mind does. Your gifts aren't triggered by preference. They're triggered by assignment. And when you walk into an environment that doesn't match your internal code, your whole being begins to protest. And to others, it feels like confrontation or attitude, but it's actually your sensitivity. You're not overreacting, you're being activated. Most people grow into their gifts, but our gifts grow us. So that's why your life didn't teach you how first. It taught you where. That's why you were introduced to terrain that stretched you, that stressed you, that sharpened you. Not because God abandoned you, but because that terrain is the only thing strong enough to pull out what your DNA already contains. And this isn't heaven for us. It never felt like heaven to us. Some seasons felt like hell with a pulse. Because when you are anointed at the DNA level, your earth becomes a training ground, not a comfort zone. Your gifting requires resistance. Your insight requires that friction. Your calling requires exposure to environments that test your internal programming. You were never here to fit. You were here to remember everything before birth. And every hard environment is just a reminder of who you were before you got here and who you're becoming as you walk it out. There are people who wake up on this earth and learn as they go. And then there are people like you, like me, people who didn't learn into their gifts. Your gifts came with you. They were woven into your spiritual DNA long before the world ever had a say. And they were woven into your spiritual DNA so no one could just go and unplug you or pull it out. So you were thrown here prepared. So you were pre-stimulated, pre-enriched, and pre-developed in realms where jealousy could not thrive, where sabotage cannot breathe, and where compassion does not exist. The devil couldn't stay up above in the heavens because what he was beginning to turn into would not be able to thrive there. But if he comes here, he can sabotage. And so that's why God gave us so much protection, heavy, heavy protection. Because God already knew the moment that we landed on earth, we would be entering a territory that would be heavy with envy, heavy with monitoring, heavy with people who read talent like predators smell fear. So heaven made sure you were equipped before exposure. You came with spiritual DNA. It wasn't empty. It was already carrying high intellectual bandwidth, high creative flow, advanced perception, an instinct for truth, an instinct for danger, an instinct for dishonor, an instinct for healing. And because of that, you've always responded to environments in ways that confused other people. What looks dramatic and like an overreaction to them is actually diagnostic for you. Your being doesn't wait for proof. Your being can read. When a car goes for diagnostic testing, it doesn't have to sit and wait for the car to malfunction because it reads. It reads malfunction. It doesn't have to wait for proof. Your DNA responds to frequencies, motives, and patterns that most people can't detect until the damage is already done. And many of us walk in and feel as though we are damaged because we didn't know who we were. No one was teaching us this. Imagine your doctor says, "Oh, I want to get an x-ray of your hand for me. Let me get an x-ray of your hand, find out what's going on." Because what it does, those diagnostic tests, they can detect things before you even know they exist. It doesn't need proof. It reads. You don't react. You're not overreacting. We even got it wrong. We recognized. We read. So down here, people identify gifts fast, not to celebrate them, but to manipulate them, block them, monitor them, and drain them. That's why God, in his way, frowns upon those that hurt the spiritually gifted. And he wants vengeance to be his. He wants that satisfaction. Heaven knew that if you arrived empty, you'd be vulnerable before you even developed language. So your pre-birth environment was enriched on purpose. You were given what others spend decades seeking: discernment, inner intelligence, heightened awareness, spiritual instinct, intuitive eyesight, emotional comprehension, and strategic foresight. These weren't developed on Earth. These were preloaded, so Earth couldn't delete them. Some computers are preloaded with software for us to use. Some people may be able to delete on some computers. But often if you delete some things that is natural, we're not talking about games, some things that are preloaded, if you delete them, the system will begin to malfunction. God said that's what cloning does. When they can't use and you don't agree, you don't do what they want, but you might still be a little useful, you're super talented. That's what happens to individuals that's cloned. So the first thing they need the world to believe is that the person lost it. Maybe they did. Look at anyone who is perceived to be cloned. Let me continue. The reason you survived sabotage is because your gifts didn't originate here. So people who operate from envy try to identify gifted individuals before they become confident individuals. You have parents that try to sabotage their own babies. Why? Because they know if they catch you early, when you doubt yourself, when you're still learning your voice, when you're still forming your identity, they can interrupt, delay, or distort your path. It's done to children in the early ages of schooling. So many of the attacks you face weren't random. They were timed. But what will work for someone else doesn't work with you. Your gifts made you identifiable. Your light made you traceable. Your purpose made you interruptible. But your preparation made you indestructible. They thought they saw your potential. They never saw your preloaded foundation. They don't even know what that's all about. This spiritual stuff frustrates them. So they'll react with visceral to spiritual teaching and healing. They don't believe because they can't believe, and they're not supposed to. We're not supposed to heal everyone. We're not supposed to transform everyone. You walk into a space and instantly feel tension, intentions, resentment, spiritual traffic, hidden competition, unsaid hostility, and quiet fascination. It is not paranoia. Your DNA is recognizing the terrain, but you haven't been trained. Other people have to observe. You absorb instantly. It is not a weakness. It is not fragility. It doesn't make you fragile. It doesn't make you breakable. Other people wait for confirmation, but you can feel it before it speaks. Your reactions aren't emotional. Your spirit gets it before your head can make logic out of it. So your reactions aren't emotional, they're spiritual memory. You're wondering why, others are wondering why you react like that, right? Why did you react like that? And you even second guess yourself. No, you're different. So you're anointed, you're called, you're special to God, you're special on this earth. You weren't reacting to, you may say, well, I don't have any experience with this person, so why am I feeling this way? Because your spirit is memorizing. You're operating from spiritual experience, not emotional experience. What's emotional for others is spiritual for us. That's why we feel as deep as we do when we get hurt. When we want to tell someone about healing and meditating and all those different things, they'll be like, oh, that's not for me. That's not good. And you had to be introduced to hard terrain. Your gifts do not grow in comfort. They get activated in conflict. So you had to be exposed by people who didn't like you, systems that underestimated you, rooms that restricted you, environments that drained you, leaders who feared you, peers who competed with you. That was to wake you, not break you. For someone else, those environments would destroy them, but for you, they train you. Every uncomfortable space becomes a classroom for your calling. I've been through so much in this lifetime, I don't think anyone could believe. Your spiritual DNA is like a code that reacts to terrain. So when you're in places beneath your calling, your soul feels unrest. Darn well, you ain't supposed to be there. When you're in rooms that is too small for your assignment or a relationship that is not part of your assignment, you feel suffocated. When you're around people who can't carry depth, they're not deep, you feel spiritually malnourished. And then when you meet people who are like you, oh my gosh, it does something to your spirit. So when we get church hurt, it really hurts because we're sincere. And your discomfort is not a flaw, it's guidance. I was reading how shamans, native shamans, are often shunned in their own families. They're not well received either. I always assumed they were well received. It's natural. Not all the time, because jealousy and envy exists there too. And when we are in uncomfortable situations, just like Jesus walked away from his entire family, you are meant to settle where your potential can. You're not meant to settle where your potential cannot breathe. Why do you think Jesus disappeared? Where did you think he went before he returned? His family, he had to argue with. They teased him. They told him he didn't know much. His father wasn't much. He's a carpenter's son, and he couldn't grow there. And he left and returned. Where did he go? He went where he can be nourished and trained. And for us, we want to be nourished and trained. Then unfortunately, we go to many places. They end up being a cult. They operate like a cult. That's why cults love gifted individuals. They see it. They see from, just like we can see, they see from their realm. They're into it. And you go there and your potential cannot even breathe. But they siphon off of your energy though. So earth is not meant to be heaven for us, guys. We're gifted, and us being gifted, the world can feel like punishment instead of placement. Because we see too much, we sense too much, we perceive too much. We cannot tolerate dishonor. We cannot tolerate manipulation. We cannot tolerate spiritual debris. We cannot tolerate environments that suppress the God in us. Earth becomes a battleground, and it's disguised as a classroom. But all we know, we're in a battle. We don't understand that it's a classroom. If we did, we wouldn't take things so personal. But we don't know. Shame on the spiritual leaders that see the gift in us, the God in us, the blessings in us, and they exploit it because they're not equipped to even train us. And while others are just living, we're surviving and learning simultaneously. We weren't sent here spiritually empty-handed. And even in the hardest terrain, our spiritual instincts warn us. Our sensitivity will protect us. Our discernment will guide us. Our foresight will prepare us. Our resilience will carry us. Insight that shields us. We were not thrown into chaos and drama and toxicity and betrayal. We were positioned in it. And people say, well, once you know who you are, well, hell, who am I then? God, you gave me all these gifts and you just keep me walking through hell. Why? Your life wasn't random. Your reactions are not random. Your development is not random. Every terrain you survived trained a different part of your spiritual DNA. We call it torture. God calls it training. We don't have anyone here to wake us up. And so what feels like punishment is actually preparation, and we didn't know it. But if we realized we were being prepared, we wouldn't be so PTSD over it, right? I was in the military and I understood what boot camp was. I understood what it was. It was preparation. So I didn't get offended by it. I didn't get offended. I understood what it was before I encountered it. My brothers went through, right? But imagine you're put there and no one tells you. You ain't getting paid for it. Nobody's going to tip their hat to you and say thank you for your service. For us on this earth, we had to encounter betrayal, envy, targeting, drained individuals, imitation, sabotage attempts, and competitive spirits because our calling requires mastery over human behavior, spiritual warfare, and emotional intelligence. Anything weaker than you can navigate can't lead where you're going. Some of us, even at teenagers, small children, we've seen things. And we may have been able to make certain decisions. We needed to be consulted by our own parents. And maybe some of our parents became upset over that. They were looking at our age. And maybe we could have blessed them in certain areas. But they probably didn't even know how to use what this kid has. And so your gifts need depth, and depth requires weight. You were built for this. You were equipped before you arrived because your purpose is bigger than the terrain you're walking through. You're not here to fit. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to be approved. You're here to recognize who you were before earth touched you and who God is shaping you into as you move through it. What others call sensitivity is your internal compass. What other people say about us, oh, they overreact, they're a little crazy or whatever. No, that's our protective instinct. What others call, oh, they're doing too much. She's over there you doing healing energy and meditating. All that stuff isn't necessary. No, that's our spiritual DNA refusing to shrink. You are becoming, you're remembering, and every environment that tried to break you has only trained you to walk stronger into the next one. Before you ever touched this world, having placed deposits in you that earth could never undo, your spiritual DNA came encoded with mental force, creative depth, emotional intelligence, and spiritual detection. You didn't arrive empty, you arrived equipped. People spent decades trying to develop what you were born carrying. And that's why you've never reacted like everyone else. Your being is responding to its original programming, not earthly conditioning. This is why your sensitivity, your instincts, your perception, they all existed before your first trauma, before your first betrayal, before your first disappointment. You didn't learn it. You brought it with you. Earth is heavy with envy. People don't just watch greatness, they hunt greatness. They compare themselves to it, and sometimes they try to suffocate it. But heaven saw that. Heaven accounted for that. So your developmental season didn't begin at birth. It began in realms where jealousy can't breathe. Your gifts were cultivated away from human interference, so they couldn't be identified too early by the wrong eyes. That is why we're not supposed to hang with people. We have to have time to ourselves. We can't have a lot of flow in and out of our homes. You would be damaged before destiny even started if God shaped us on earth. So having prepared us before exposure, because envious people always assume you're beatable. They misread your preparation as vulnerability. Some of the most powerful people in the spirit are the most humble. So they think because you don't announce yourself, you're not equipped. But what they don't know is this: your resilience was formed before you even arrived here. They interpreted your quiet as weakness, your empathy as naivete, and your hesitation as fear. But every attempt to reduce you activates a deeper part of your spiritual DNA. You were protected from them. Your responses aren't emotional. They are diagnostic. We read. That's what it means by reading. You read something before it can manifest a symptom. That's why we're so emotional. But no one told us. Our spiritual DNA reacts to hidden agendas, dishonest motives. We look at motives that's unsaid, and the spiritual traffic long before our mind can even shape a thought. Other people need evidence. You need presence. Other people need confirmation. You need just expose me to it and I'll know what I'm working with. You've always been able to read the temperature of a place without asking a single question. That is your gift. Your spirit is reading, not your logic. That's not paranoia, sweethearts. That's prophetic instinct, and it's woven into our spiritual identity. That's why they can't rip it out. People like you don't grow in calm. You grow under pressure and uncomfortable season after uncomfortable season because your calling requires emotional stamina and spiritual intelligence. And that is why you were exposed to competitive spirits, distrustful environments, unspoken hostility, sabotage attempts, opportunistic connections, and draining individuals. And it wasn't because God wanted you to suffer, but because your assignment requires mastery. How many hours or years you have to go through something to be considered master of that environment, of that in which you are exposed to? I think all of us is over 10. Every difficult environment was training ground, not punishment. You weren't thrown into the wrong rooms. You were strategically placed in them. You needed to learn how dishonor operates. You needed to learn the how manipulation hides, how resentment behaves, how entitlement speaks, how spiritual targeting feels. You had to learn things early because your calling requires you to navigate human behavior with wisdom beyond your age. Your gifts are high level and your exposure had to match. Gifted individuals often describe their life as heavy, lonely, exhausting, and spiritually loud because you're not just walking through life, you're walking through layers of unseen combat. Unseen combat. Those are things you learn in boot camp. This world doesn't match your spiritual sensitivity. What others can tolerate drains you instantly. What others overlook injures you deeply. What others normalize violates your internal code. This is why Earth doesn't feel like home for you. It feels like assignment. It feels like battle. It feels like survival. But yet it's our destiny in disguise. Even when you felt abandoned or even were abandoned, you were armed. Even when you felt overlooked, because you were overlooked, you were carried. And even when you felt like you were under attack, because you were under attack, you were still covered. Because you walk with the spiritual instinct, the prophetic perception, the emotional intelligence, the internal reinforcement, the divine resilience, the unexplainable endurance and intuition that cannot be taught. They envy you because what you have, they can't learn. You were never lacking. You were loaded. So you keep on healing. You keep on praying. You keep on being sensitive. You keep on walking away from environments that are beneath you and relationships too. Because you don't just survive what others collapse under, you learn from it. You learn the how. Your spiritual DNA was built for weight. You were built for it. You just didn't know. No one told you. I'm black, right? So if you didn't know, I am. I'm growing up with somebody training me to be black. And then one day I look in the mirror and say, I was already black. That's part of my DNA, my genetics. Everything you've ever overcome wasn't shaping you, it was revealing you. So you're not stepping into new identity. You're returning to your original design. They don't want you around individuals or connecting with individuals that reveal you. It's like you're looking in a mirror. You understand each other. They don't want that. Because the reactions you've had your whole life, the instincts that protected you, the patterns that you noticed, and even the battles you survived, they weren't new. They were reminders. You're here to remember that your spiritual DNA was already carrying divine intelligence, that divine strength, and even divine purpose before you ever touched you. Before earth ever touched you, before your mother ever held you. You're not here to fit, you're here to stand. You're here to walk in your calling with boldness, power, and spiritual maturity. You came preloaded, equipped, and destined, and no terrain can undo what heaven encoded in you. There are people who show up on this earth and take years to discover who they are. Then there are people like you, individuals who walked in carrying more than what life gave you. Your spiritual DNA arrived already loaded, already equipped, already formed with levels of intelligence, creativity, instinct, and perception that cannot be manufactured, imitated, or duplicated. I have grandchildren. So the two oldest, I was led to send them everything having to do with art. One, the oldest, he could care less for it after a while, but the little one took to it. And so they were doing it for years. So the one that was younger, so they never had art lessons. And so they were also in an environment that didn't have art in school. And the youngest one began to have these experiences, right? And so we were told, let him get into art. And it was like, oh, he already enjoys drawing. Little did we know. I took him to art school. And one of the teachers was the head of the university's art department. And my baby was in the ninth grade. Ninth or the 10th? The ninth grade. And so I just said I wanted him to have lessons or whatever. After a few lessons once a week, This guy comes out to speak to me and it says he can get personal lessons, but he's way advanced above the other children. I thought it was something racist. It wasn't. I had no idea how well he developed. And he said if he continues like this, I can guarantee him a full scholarship. And so ultimately, he was accepted into a performing arts school. But that's the thing. What we have came with us, right? You didn't become, you arrived as what you already were. So before you ever opened your eyes, you were enriched. Before your first breath, you were stimulated by realms where jealousy cannot survive and sabotage cannot take root. Not because heaven was giving you an advantage, but because earth is heavy with people who can sense a gifted individual faster than you can sense yourself. And if you came here empty, they would have destroyed you before you ever learned your name. You came preloaded. You didn't grow into awareness. You recognized that your DNA was carrying it. This wasn't shaped by trauma. It wasn't shaped by upbringing. It was inherited from realms that prepared you for territories you didn't choose. I had it partially wrong. People think you figured things out. No, you were being remembered. You always knew when something was off. You always felt the air, the weight in the air. You always sensed when someone wasn't safe even before they revealed it. You didn't learn this, you carried it. And like I said before, earth is thick with envy. People see potential before they see personhood. They read ability as an opportunity to drain you, to manipulate, to diminish you, to steal from you, to work for free or pennies on a dollar. So heaven intervened before earth could interfere. Your gifts were protected before birth so they wouldn't be intercepted by the wrong eyes. People with insecure hearts can sense someone like you from miles away. They sense your uniqueness before you do. They sense your inner strength long before you learned how to use it. If you were raised only by earth, you would have been crushed before you grew. Heaven made sure you were stimulated before your environment, that you were strengthened before your struggle, that you were fortified before betrayal. You were enriched before exposure because your greatness had to be grown in a realm where sabotage cannot reach. For every sabotage that was attempted on you, it miscalculated you. Every gifted person has been underestimated, not because they are powerless, but because they are quiet in a world addicted to acting, being loud. So sabotagers mistake your silence for fear. And if you're very thoughtful, they consider that being insecure. If you're a compassionate individual, that person's naive. They don't realize that your foundation predates every attack they planned. God has to avenge you. They never saw the inner resilience heaven built in you before you arrived. They never saw the pre-birth reinforcement. They never saw the spiritual depth you inherited. They never knew the divine investment placed in your DNA. They only see what they think they can prey on. Prey. They never see what God already placed beyond their reach. And so you always responded to rooms and environments differently. Your reactions confuse people who don't understand spiritual intelligence. So you walk into a place and instantly feel everything. You feel the truth before it reveals itself. You don't need proof. All you need is their presence and yours. Other people need facts. All you need is exposure because your being reacts before your mind forms a thought. Your instincts alert you before your eyes see anything. You don't misread the room. The room misrepresents itself and you're the first one to catch it. People like you don't grow in peace. You grow in pressure, not because God enjoys seeing you struggle, but because the gifts you carry require emotional stamina, spiritual understanding, and internal strength most people never develop. So you were introduced to all those things. Every one of those environments served as training, not punishment. The pressure didn't make you weaker. It activated what was already in you. Your tension didn't break you. It sharpened you, and that's why your discomfort didn't ruin you. You were strategically placed in those environments. You had to observe the how. And your assignment requires wisdom that cannot be learned through comfort. And your gift requires insight that cannot be gained through ease. Your exposure matched the weight of what you carried. And you're spiritually sensitive in a world that has become emotionally numb. That's why your life felt so heavy. And that's why relationships have felt draining for you. And workplaces that felt suffocating. Social circles that felt misaligned. and why normal environments felt spiritually dangerous to you. You are not just walking through life, you're walking through layers of unseen conflict that your sensitivity cannot ignore. And this is why earth doesn't feel peaceful to you. Your battle training. You're able to walk through fire with insight others don't carry. People wonder how you survived what you face, but survival is in your DNA. You were built with layers of strength that don't crumble under weight. You were built with perception that doesn't fail. You were built with spiritual endurance that cannot be explained. You weren't created for weakness. You were created for assignment. Every challenge, every betrayal, every painful environment, none of it was shaping you. It was revealing you. It was removing the layers so you can see yourself in the mirror, honestly. So you can step into what you were. It wasn't a new identity, it's what you already were. You were returning to your original design. And that's why nothing about you has ever been simple. Your reactions, your instinct, your sensitivity, and your discomfort. It was not overthinking. People are responding to the truth of who you were before you were born. That's why you do not fit in. You're unable to blend in. And that's why small minded individuals fear anything they cannot control. You came here with a purpose, and it was pre encoded, it was imprinted. You came here loaded. You came here armed with gifts that intimidate because you carry a destiny they cannot block. And none of it can undo what heaven encoded into your spiritual DNA. No jealousy, no terrain, no sabotage, no betrayal, and no attempt. You're becoming the version of you that earth could never tame. Your story didn't start here on earth. Your story started in a realm where intention comes before breath. Your purpose will come before your personality, where your destiny is crafted before the body ever forms. You are not the product of circumstance, you are the product of divine preparation. Before you touched this world, something touched you. Something shaped you, something enriched you, and something activated you. This world did not give you your gifts. This world only confirmed what you already carried. And that's why you've already always been different. You didn't learn your intelligence. You didn't learn your sensitivity. And you did not learn your discernment. You arrived with it. People think DNA is only about physical inheritance, but what you carried was spiritual inheritance, the intelligence of previous realms, the insight of previous assignments, the wisdom of previous journeys. You are encoded with a mental magnitude, a creative force, emotional insight, spiritual perception, intuitive intelligence, and a deep internal knowing that cannot be taught. These were not learned behaviors, they were preloaded responses. That's why you always felt older than your age, why you can lead from an early age. You were connected early, and shallow environments or relationships suffocate you. You weren't being dramatic, you were being accurate. Your spiritual DNA reacts to truth and danger long before your mind can even process it. Earth is not a neutral place. It's heavy with competition, insecurity, envy, and spiritual sabotage. If you had arrived empty, they would have broken you before you ever discovered yourself. Heaven ensured that no earthly experience could erase what was placed in you. Even in your darkest seasons, you never fully collapsed. You lived to tell the story because something in you kept restoring itself. It kept rising. It refused to die. And I am a living witness. That something was your original programming, untouched, unchanged, and unmoved. This is why your presence intimidated people early. We attract reactions that we never asked for, not because we did something, and it was all because we were something. We were somebody. We were special in the eyes of God. So instead of celebrating us, many people feel threatened because they can't explain our ability. They can't match our insight. We have the type of composure they can't copy. And we have the type of perception they can't hide from. And we're not showing off. We're simply being what we were programmed to be. But insecure hearts see what you carry as a challenge instead of a blessing. And this is why so many individuals try to outshine you, silence you, compete with you, undermine you, or drain you. And you were just existing. Your existence exposed their emptiness. And so we felt things deeper, sharper, and louder than others. And we're always being labeled. Our reality, in reality, that spirit, that sensitivity in us is an alarm that's wired in our system. The sensitivity is part of our soul, and it never forgot heaven. That's why You were birthed with a soul. No man can recreate a soul. Can't be explained. They have to acknowledge God in heaven whether they like it or not. See, you feel truth. And some people will assume that your resilience, it came from your trauma because they know you've been through a lot. So they'll believe that it all came from your trauma. But it did not come from your trauma. It didn't. The trauma only revealed the strength you already had. Your spiritual DNA was carrying emotional endurance. You had the ability to self-regulate, even if it took some time. You also had the ability to stay calm in chaos, the instinct to withdraw from danger, the capacity to recover quickly. The world tried to break you with spiritual targeting, rejection, but you weren't built here on earth. You were delivered to earth already complete. Your path will never match your age or your stage. You questioned what others accepted. You carried burdens others couldn't hold. And you recognized deception that others would normalize. And this is because you weren't operating from earthly development. You were operating from preloaded intelligence. Your being didn't wait for lessons, it recognized patterns. That's why you reacted the way that you did. You were able to read. And sometimes you may even feel like an old soul in a young world. You don't just walk through life, you also walk through resistance. When the adversary sees someone carrying divine intelligence and divine strength and divine assignment and divine perception, resistance becomes automatic. And where others get imitation problems, you get strategic opposition. Where others feel discomfort, you feel warfare. Where others feel confusion, you get spiritual interference. That's why you can tell if a dynamic is dangerous. And some relationships feel spiritually expensive. You were not meant to walk blindly. You were wired to detect. That's why you are highly sensitive, and you are highly sensitive. You ever wonder why you just know? Why you feel things without explanation? Why you avoid certain people without a single incident? Why you lose peace around certain individuals instantly? Or why your spirit tightens before your mind understands why? Because your DNA is built to detect terrain, not logic. Your spirit doesn't wait on your mind. And that is not a flaw. It's a divine feature. It's part of the makeup, part of your structure. So you were designed to sense dishonor, recognize unspoken hostility, identify draining individuals, avoid harmful connections, and perceive spiritual danger. And this is why your reactions are instant. Your being doesn't guess, it remembers. This entire journey, every challenge, every betrayal, every misjudgment, every environment that didn't match your essence wasn't shaping you. It was revealing you. It was pulling back the layers that drowned out the real you. It hid you. You are not evolving into someone new. You are returning to who you were before earth touched you. And the more you return, the more you trust your instincts. You stand in your insight. You honor your sensitivity. You protect your energy. You move with purpose. You identify threats instantly. You walk with authority. Nothing about you is accidental. Nothing about your identity is random. Nothing about your strength is surprising. Nothing about your intelligence is luck. Nothing about your survival is coincidence. You came preloaded. You came enriched. You came equipped, and you came destined. And nothing, not envy, not sabotage, not betrayal, not judgment, can erase what heaven encoded into your spiritual DNA. And this is your beginning, and this is your reminder. Because people often think your battle started when you were old enough to understand them. But the truth is deeper concerning you. Your battle started before you had language, before you could walk, crawl, or even recognize danger. Something in the spiritual realm recognized you. Because individuals like you don't arrive unnoticed. You arrive with presence, the kind of presence that unsettles the insecure, the kind of presence that wakes up envy, the kind of presence that exposes intentions, the kind of presence that activates resistance. You didn't ask for this. It came with your assignment. And because of that, heaven had to prepare you early, long before your body was formed, before the world had a chance to touch you. Because the world is saturated with comparison. People don't just observe, they measure. They don't just coexist, they compete. And they don't just watch, they monitor. And when someone like you shows up carrying depth, intuition, perception, intelligence, and purpose, envy awakens instantly. And people have to know you. They don't need to know you to envy you. Envy responds to what it cannot become. I'll say it again. Envy responds to what it cannot become. They are not a threat to your gifts. And heaven knew that if you came into this environment unprepared, the envy around you would have crushed you. Your preparation, of course, it didn't start in a nursery. It started in the realm where your purpose was crafted. Heaven strengthened you. Heaven poured into you before birth. Heaven knew that people would attempt to take from you, attempt to silence you, try to copy you, try to control you, be territorial around you, and feel threatened by you. You were given spiritual intelligence early so that human interference wouldn't stunt you. Gifted people have a glow even as infants, and insecure hearts detect that glow immediately. And that's why some adults treated you harshly. Certain relatives disliked you early. Peers were competitive before there was anything to compete for. Teachers reacted to you strongly. Strangers looked at you longer, and people projected negativity onto you without cause because your presence activated something inside them. Not because you were doing anything, but because who you were disturbed what they were not. People fear what they cannot label, copy, or become. Every battle you faced, even as a child, was tied to your identity. You weren't behaving. You weren't rebellious. You weren't too much. You were spiritually aware before your years. So your instincts were developed early. Your intelligence was sharp early. Heaven switched those abilities on because you needed them to survive the environments you were born into. And it wasn't protection, it was punishment, it was protection. So even as a child, you stood out, you confused the jealous, you threatened the insecure, you intrigued the wise, you activated the broken, and you inspired the quiet. Your presence preached before you knew how to form sentences. And that's why some people were drawn to you with admiration, while others were drawn to you with hostility. Your purpose is magnetic, but so is envy. Insecure hearts attack greatness early because it's easier to break a child than to break a grown soul. And so you may have experienced belittling, isolation, competition from adults, mothers jealous of daughters, fathers testing sons, unexplained hostility, jealousy disguised as concern, and discouragement disguised as guidance. You weren't imagining it. Those individuals saw something on you that they didn't want to see grow. But heaven made sure the enriched you received, that enrichment, what you received before birth, was strong enough to withstand their attempts. You were protected from within. Remember, when you were here, God switched it on because you would need it. He couldn't wait until you were 18 months or turned 16. Your early insight wasn't meant to scare you. Your early maturity wasn't meant to burden you. And your early sensitivity wasn't meant to overwhelm you. These were divine precautions. Heaven thickened your spiritual skin before earth ever got the chance to bruise it. And so this is why you bounce back from pain. You didn't lose your identity. You outgrew environments quickly. You didn't internalize harsh treatment. And some of you saw through people even as a child. You were pre-equipped. Everything people tried to use against you failed because your foundation wasn't earthly. They couldn't damage what they didn't create. They couldn't dismantle what heaven reinforced. They couldn't silence what God activated. They couldn't weaken what was divinely enhanced. Your growth came from an eternal source, not from human approval. You don't have to crumble under attacks because your strength wasn't installed by this world. So they can't take it. And so your life didn't begin with confusion. It began with intention. So every challenge you experienced early was a direct reaction to the power you carry. You weren't shaped by any envy. You were strengthened because of it. Your insight is unwavering. Your perception is unmatched. Your spiritual intelligence is undeniable. Your emotional endurance is unbreakable. And your sensitivity has matured into wisdom. This world tried to break you early and failed because heaven built you early and succeeded. You are not here to survive, and you are here to outgrow it, to outwalk it, and rise so far beyond it that no insecure heart can ever reach the heights of your calling. And this is why you were prepared before you were born, not to fear envy, but to transcend it. And sabotage is rarely about you. It's about what others fear in you. Individuals who feel small in their own identity try to reduce those who carry spiritual depth, intuitive intelligence, and divine assignment. Every spiritual leader is not called or anointed by God. And because you don't introduce yourself loudly, because you move quietly, because you observe more than you speak, saboteurs mistake your silence for vulnerability. But they never realize they're dealing with someone who came preloaded with resilience, insight, and divine reinforcement. They're misreading will always be their downfall. They study you because your presence threatens their false confidence. And see, your identity exposes their emptiness. And anyone that tries to sabotage you, they never attack the ordinary, they attack the gifted. And so people become confused about you because you don't brag. So they think you lack confidence. You don't announce everything. They think you lack ability because you move slowly and intentionally. And they think you lack boldness because you don't rush to respond. They think you lack awareness. They don't realize that you're observing the entire room while they're still reacting to the first thing they saw. You aren't quiet because you're unsure. You're quiet because you're still processing. You're processing. Processing is your superpower. So your kindness gets misinterpreted. People think kindness equals softness. They think empathy equals availability. And they think your calmness equals lack of boundaries. But your kindness isn't weakness, it's mastery. Kind people see danger clearly. They just choose not to match it. Kind people see red flags early. They just choose to stay in peace. You weren't naive, you were just patient. And they think that you mistake your patience for permission. That's their mistake. Even when they manage to cause temporary disruption, the outcome always flips in your favor. Why? Because you learn fast, you see patterns quickly, you don't repeat mistakes, you advance spiritually, you detach without warning, you build stronger, and you don't stay where you're disrespected. Your spiritual DNA is too strong to be dismantled. Sabotage doesn't block you, it reveals the people who were never meant to walk with you. You don't need to talk for your gifts to speak. They sense your anointing, your purpose, your potential, your depth, your discernment, your internal power, and your destiny. Now, this is why sabotage rises around you without reason. Your existence is a threat to every insecure person pretending to have confidence. Your stability threatens their instability. Your insight threatens your ignorance. Your peace threatens their chaos. How you outsmart sabotage, you can do it without trying. Because you don't have to strategize, you sense. You don't have to plot, you perceive. You don't retaliate, you remove access. Your spiritual DNA makes you think ahead naturally. You understand motives instantly, and you can see consequences early. And that comes with sensing dishonesty immediately, so you can detach without guilt. You can't be manipulated because you see intention before manipulation arrives. You can read people before they speak. And every person who tries to undermine you often expose themselves. Why? They assume you're not paying attention. They assume you're not aware. They assume you're unguarded. But you're always 10 steps ahead. Their downfall is rooted in their arrogance. And they don't realize that you already sensed, detected, prepared, and secured yourself. So by the time they act, you've already moved on. You were never the target, you were the threat. And so you're misread, underestimated. That's why you get attacked. That's why you're watched. Others are reacting to the power you carry. Your spiritual DNA ensures you rise every time, and you will continue to rise. Some individuals need information before they form a judgment. Some people need words to understand intentions. You just need their energy. That's it. Some people need evidence before deciding who someone is. All you need is a moment of exposure. That's the difference between logic and spiritual intelligence, and you operate from spiritual intelligence. Your reactions are rooted in a spiritual memory that recognizes danger, dishonor, and deception before your mind can process it. Your reactions are not random. See, most people operate from logic, sight, their ego, right? Being distracted. You operate from spirit, from instinct, right? Your system is calibrated to environments the way a storm sensor is calibrated to pressure changes. You feel the shift before the storm appears. So that's why people will say you're overreacting. You're taking things too personal. When the truth is, you're reacting to what they cannot feel. Your sensitivity is the gift, it's not a burden. They're trying to convince you that it is because it helps you. It helps you avoid, disengage, identify, recognize, and sense. It protects you from the dangerous, the toxic, the jealous, and the threats. Your sensitivity has saved you repeatedly. And if you had ignored your instincts, you would have walked into traps, relationships, friendships, and environments that were not safe for your purpose. Your sensitivity protects your destiny. Thank you for visiting my channel. I'll see you on the next one. Stay covered, stay conscious, and always stay undefeated. See you on the next one. Bye bye. Hey guys, I was gonna take a day off because I have some studies that I'm working on. I'm also in school. I'm always very busy, but I can't. God gave me another download. And just bear with me, I want to talk first. I get downloads to the point I want to cry. And all my life, I enjoy writing. And YouTube is giving me a space for it. And I thought about some of you look at my topics. And for instance, the bug, there's a video about the bug, right? And that came from a dream. I had a dream that I was in this place, almost like it's not military barracks, but like an old school that had people staying in it to clean it up for the summer. And they had their own rooms. And it began to flood. And whenever there's water in a dream, I was told that it meant healing. And so I saw this little bug. Maybe it was in the water. So I assumed it was a water bug, but it scared me. So what I did was I found a hose. This is all in the dream. And I sprayed the bug with the hose because it was still floating around as if it was alive in the water. And the more I sprayed that bug, the angrier it got and the bigger it became. And I just kept screaming, holding this water, the hose, spraying the bug, and it was chasing me to the point where I dropped the hose. And I was screaming, running to whoever, it was other people there. And I was screaming and running, screaming and running. And then I woke up. And here it is, I'm studying. And I had another thought. And what I do is I have to just type. I used to write all the time, actually handwriting, because that felt better, right? It just felt good to handwrite. But for the very first time, I had to get some type of shot in my hand, like a cortisone shot, but she had to mix it because it was like cramping really, really, really bad for the first time. And so reluctantly, I did get the shot and it helped. It was the end of September and it truly helped me a lot. And so I was able to get up. Well, I didn't have to get up on this one that's going to come out now. I had something else to put out, others things to put out. But I'm sitting here and maybe about 15 minutes ago, and God let me know I spoke about being born into toxic families. And what I do is I'll write or type. In this case with YouTube, I've been typing everything. I'll type it and I'll catalog it. And then I get it put in script form to make it entertaining. But this other one that I just got blew my mind. And I can't wait until later on this evening and start uploading about 5, 6 videos. These videos I need to put out now because God gave me a word for you guys in regards to help you understand more so why you've had your experience, not necessarily why you've had, well, it was a need for you to have your experience, but it was more than because you were born into a toxic family. It was more than that. And so I just wrote, it was like a page, and I got it put into a little entertaining a little bit. But anyways, God just blew my mind. My mind was blown. And I am in typing, right? But I was reading something about genetics. And God, I'm going to just give you a couple of sentences, but it's a whole page of what I wrote. But I'm going to put it into form and I'm putting it out now. I can't even wait to put it out now, right? And it makes me emotional. But what dropped in my spirit was that our individual spiritual DNA makeup, it predisposes us to high levels of intellectual and creative potential, healing ability, right? And it required each of us, whether you're a healer, a seer, a prophet, all of that, it required you to be in an environment that was very rich and stimulating in order for you to achieve your full potential. And so it required you to be raised under the right condition, right? Without any deprivation. You couldn't be deprived. So I said, God, that doesn't make sense. Because I said that they were born into toxic families, right? He said, no, that was correct. He said, but the heavens ensured that you were pre-stimulated and enriched before your birth. You were stimulated in that environment, and it's very rich, right? And that, all that you came with, is going to ensure that you reach your potential. But I said, that still doesn't make sense to me, God, because you told me that the toxic family makes us reach our full potential. He said, correct, but this is what else I typed. Because jealousy and envy is so heavy here on earth, others would be able to determine your skill set. And they are fooled into believing that they can sabotage you. And it works because they don't know who you are. And this is why you react, you heal, you teach, you're truthful, and all those other things naturally because you were introduced before your birth. He said you were born into the toxic in families so that you can be introduced to the terrain that you are to operate in. And now they stimulate your DNA that you can find the endurance to do what I called you to do. So when people sabotage you, they can't take away from you. Love, y'all gotta understand. I don't care what they do to you. I don't care if you're 90 years old and you come into the realization. You were already having predisposed you, your spiritual DNA, and you had high level training. You have high level potential. You are already rich and you were reared, stimulated in environments that benefited your full potential. And here it is. We're upset and hurt by the way we were raised in toxic families, but they were just completing the call, right? What they were to do was to teach you endurance. And once you wake up to who you are, your training has been completed. So anyone who's new to my channel, this may not make sense to you. Just get on with the video. Unfortunately, not. I will be reading, I will be developing the rest of this right for you guys. And God wants you to know that is why your life felt like hell on earth. This is not heaven for us. We feel so deeply, deeply, because in heaven we were nurtured. So we come out here all pure, open, kind, because we weren't raised in a criminal, toxic environment. When individuals are raised, if they're not predisposed to spiritual gifts, whatever they are raised in will only bring out. It can take over because they don't have all these gifts, right? They're not anointed. We don't even have to have anyone anoint us. We're already anointed because everyone who anoints us are not necessarily for us. And so we may come into individuals, come in contact, and they say, let me anoint you. Let me pray for you. I see your gifts. We don't require that, God said. We don't require it, period. We truly don't. And we're wondering why we constantly are going through things on jobs and relationships, being used, taken advantage of, betrayed in every way, over and over and over and over and over again. And we're going through it over and over and over and over and over again, not just for endurance, but to waken us up to the point to where we say, I don't have to take this. This isn't natural to me. That's why it hurts so deeply. I wasn't raised in this environment. Absolutely not. So I'm going to leave this alone. I'm going back to as close as I can to heaven, and I'm going to take down these environments. This is unnatural to me. And you begin to use your gifts to heal people, to break generational curses, to do things that are unnatural. It's a lot more. I have something else that I'm going to say to you later on tonight, but I'm going to get into this and put this all together, and I'm going to give it to you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.